This letter started in March, with my finger pointed at you, at what happened, at what broke, at what I thought you needed to see.
Imagine sitting down, to write a furious letter to your ex.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. You've got the pen, you've got the paper, and just all this anger and righteous indignation welling up inside you.
You are totally ready to catalog every grievance.
Exactly. Every boundary crossed, every late-night argument.
Yeah.
But the second the pen hits the paper, it turns into a mirror.
Wow.
Yeah. Instead of a list of their flaws, you are suddenly terrifyingly staring at your own reflection.
That is quite the visual.
It really is. And that pivot, from outward blame to an absolute inward reckoning is exactly what we were exploring in your sources today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We've got your sources laid out today, and honestly, the stack you've given us is, well, it's unlike anything we've tackled recently. We're unpacking a true multimedia tapestry here.
It's a fascinating collection. I mean, usually we look at a study, a book, maybe a series of articles, right?
Yeah.
But here we have a raw, intensely personal letter, a conceptual episode guide, a highly poetic set of song lyrics, and an incredibly detailed music video shot list.
It's a lot to process.
It is, but
Yeah.
they are all telling the exact same story from completely different angles.
Right. And our mission for you today is to synthesize all of this. We want to analyze how the clinical psychology and the raw emotion of the text, which, explores a depthly toxic relationship, the filing of a protective order, and this massive psychological shift.
Yeah.
We want to see how all of that is seamlessly translated into the song Three Fingers Pointing Back and its visually arresting music video.
The translation between mediums is key here.
It is. What strikes me immediately is the artistic ambition of it all.
Yeah.
Like taking something as clinical and internal as a psychological framework and turning it into a visual and musical journey. The architecture of that translation is what we really need to dig into.
I completely agree. And before we get into the mechanisms of how that translation works, I think it is vital to establish our lens for this analysis.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the sources we have in front of us detail a highly fraught relationship. I mean, the text mentions harassment, alcohol use, and the real legal reality of a protective order.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy. But our focus today is entirely on the author's internal journey. We are going to examine how that psychological journey is externalized in art.
Right. We're not here to judge the relationship.
Exactly. We aren't here to take sides or to litigate the conflicts described in the letter. Our goal is strictly impartial and analytical. We want to explore the architecture of this emotional survival and the subsequent healing as it's portrayed in the text and the video.
Which is so necessary because to truly understand the deep internal healing depicted in the song, we have to establish the baseline.
We have to know where we're starting.
Right. We have to look at where the author is starting from, physically and emotionally.
Mm.
The narrative through line here moves from the outward chaos of the relationship to the stark, sometimes terrifying silence of the self.
The quiet room.
Yes. So let's unpack this beginning. The emotional context starts with the letter. The text notes that this letter actually began in March, and originally it was a completely different document.
It was essentially a catalog of blame.
It really was.
Yeah, the text is very transparent about its own origins. The author notes that it started with the finger pointed firmly outward.
Like looking at everything the other person did wrong.
Exactly. They were writing about what happened, what you did, what you lost. It was drafted in the immediate aftermath of filing a protective order during a period of intense fear and hypervigilance. And when you look at the psychological state described in those early pages, you are looking at classic nervous system exhaustion.
The phrase that really stuck with me from the text was how the author described the dynamic of the relationship. They wrote that loving this person felt like walking through a room full of glass, trying not to step wrong.
Ooh, that's visceral.
Isn't it? If you think about the physical reality of that metaphor, it's not just about emotional sadness. It's about biology.
Oh, for sure.
Your body is constantly activated. Your heart rate is up. Your cortisol is spiked. You're anticipating the next crisis.
It is a state of perpetual threat assessment. I mean, when you are in an environment that requires you to constantly monitor the mood, the sobriety, or the stability of another person just to ensure your own safety.
You never relax.
Your nervous system literally never powers down. The room full of glass metaphor perfectly encapsulates the physical tension of that environment.
You're taking tiny calculated steps.
Right, exhausted by the effort of simply existing in the space without causing a shatter. And when that threat is suddenly removed, like when the protective order is filed and the physical separation actually occurs, the nervous system doesn't immediately know how to rest.
Exactly. It's still waiting for the glass to break. And that brings us to the transition into silence. The letter notes something really profound here. It says healing didn't look like going out and getting distracted.
It wasn't the movie montage.
No. Yeah. It didn't look like the movie version of a breakup where you get a haircut and go out with your friends. Healing looked like sitting alone in a room with notebooks, pens, and a body that was finally telling the truth before the mind was ready to admit it.
The body always knows first.
Always. The author talks about the physical manifestations of this silence, the tightness in the chest, the tension in the jaw.
Because the silence is actually terrifying at first. When you have been living in a state of high chaos, the chaos becomes your baseline.
It's what you're used to.
Yeah, the noise is a distraction from your own internal state. When the noise is suddenly removed, all of that suppressed physical tension, the adrenaline, the fear, the grief, it just rushes to the surface.
The body is keeping the score.
Exactly. The mind is still trying to write a letter of blame, trying to maintain the narrative that the problem is entirely external, but the body is forcing the author to sit in the quiet and feel the exhaustion.
And what's brilliant is how directly that clinical and physical reality translates into the poetry of the lyrics.
Oh, the transition is seamless.
The opening lines of the song literally bridge this exact gap. The first verse starts, let me find it. This letter started in March. With my finger pointed at you, at what happened, at what broke, at what I thought you needed to see.
It's very conversational.
It sounds like an accusation, right? But then, as the song moves into the second verse, the focus shifts entirely to that physical isolation we were just talking about.
I sat inside the quiet for days that turned to weeks. No noise left to hide in, no chaos left to keep.
No noise left to hide in. That is a masterful lyrical pivot.
It really hits hard.
That line alone defines the function of the relationship's chaos. The chaos wasn't just a byproduct of the toxicity, it was a hiding place. As long as there was an external fire to put out, the author didn't have to look at their own internal wounds.
Which perfectly sets up the visual embodiment of this feeling in the music video shot list. I mean, before we even see a face, the director establishes this psychological tension purely through clinical visual symbolism.
Specifically with the lighting. Yes. In the very first scenes, there is a persistent, deliberate clash between two distinct light sources. On one side, inside the room, you have a warm, vintage amber lamp. And on the other side, bleeding through the windows, you have this cool blue moonlight and rain streaked glass.
That lighting choice is foundational to the entire visual narrative. It's not just atmospheric, you know. It's heavily symbolic.
What does it represent clinically?
Well, the warm amber represents the beginning of self-reflection. In psychological terms, particularly within the framework we'll discuss later, it represents self-energy.
Self-energy, okay.
Right. It's truth, inner warmth, the core self that is trying to emerge. The cool blue moonlight, on the other hand, and the storm outside the wet glass represent the cold reality of the trauma, the past relationship, the external chaos that they have finally locked out.
And the blocking of the scene emphasizes this isolation so well. The shot list describes three men, Elias, Silas, and Victor, sitting completely motionless in this dimly lit room around a heavily scarred wooden table.
Heady shadows everywhere.
Yeah, and the camera slowly pushes in, and we just see Elias's hand hovering over a leather notebook in that amber glow.
The physical stillness of the scene is the visual equivalent of the lyrics, I sat inside the quiet. The chaos is over.
The storm is outside.
Exactly. You can see the blurred, distant lights of the city through the wet glass, representing the world continuing on. The ex-partner is out there somewhere in the storm. But the real work, the actual narrative of this story, is happening in the quiet amber glow of that desk.
It's the visual realization of that metaphor we started with. It's like thinking you're sitting down to write a prosecution brief against your ex. You got all your evidence, but you're trapped in the room with your own mind.
That's a great way to put it.
There's a very specific shot shortly after the opening where the camera looks down at all these scattered, crumpled, handwritten pages covering the wooden table.
Those crumpled pages are crucial. They represent the discarded drafts of blame.
Like they keep starting over?
Yeah, the author is trying to write the letter that points the finger outward, but it's failing. The narrative isn't working anymore. The outward focus is collapsing because the body and the mind are demanding an inward reckoning. The trauma is outside the window, but the true conflict has moved inside the room.
But, realizing the conflict is inside the room only raises more complex question. Who exactly is the author looking at?
That is the big question.
Right. We've established the setting of the quiet room, but to understand the depth of this deep dive, you need to understand who is in the room with the author. And this is where the text makes a fascinating transition.
It moves from feeling like a singular entity to a collective.
Yes, it moves from the author feeling like one broken thing to realizing that the mind is actually a complex system of parts, all turning to survive. The text heavily references internal family systems therapy, or IFS.
A brilliant framework.
And I know you are well versed in this, so how does this framework operate within the context of this letter?
Well, internal family systems is a highly effective, transformative psychological framework. Instead of viewing the mind as a single, monolithic entity, IFS posits that our minds are naturally multiple.
Like we all have different sides to us.
Exactly. We have an internal family of parts, and underneath all of them is the unbroken core self. When someone experiences trauma or even just prolonged stress like the relationship described in the text, these parts take on extreme roles to protect the system.
And the text categorizes these parts beautifully, starting with what IFS calls the protectors.
Yes, the text actually names them specifically. The author identifies the fixer, the overgiver, and the capable builder.
And what's so interesting to me is that they don't operate like tough, aggressive bodyguards. They try to control the environment with kindness.
That's a huge misconception about defenses.
Right. They try to plan everything perfectly, to perform endless emotional labor, to step in and fix the partner's problems before the pain can get too close to the author.
That is the insidious nature of certain protector parts. We often think of psychological defenses as anger, avoidance, or walls. But hypercompetence and overgiving are equally powerful defenses.
So being too helpful is a defense mechanism.
Oh, absolutely. The fixer and the capable builder are working overtime to manage the partner's moods, to ensure the room full of glass never shatters. They are managing the external environment to prevent internal triggers.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. They believe that if they just try harder, if they are just more perfect, more understanding, more helpful, then the environment will finally be safe.
But the environment isn't safe.
Yeah.
And when that strategy inevitably fails, when the partner lashes out or the fear spikes or the grief becomes overwhelming, the protectors are breached.
They get overwhelmed.
And that's when the text says the second group takes over, the firefighters.
Exactly. Firefighters are reactive parts. When the pain breaks through the protector's defenses, the firefighters rush in to extinguish the emotional fire by any means necessary.
I just want to put it out.
Right. They don't care about collateral damage. They just want fast relief. The author specifically names a social numbing part. When the pain hits, this part reaches for immediate distraction.
The text mentions bourbon, right?
Bourbon, overstimulation, noise, anything to forcefully sever the connection to the pain.
It's the psychological equivalent of pulling the fire alarm and flooding the building to put out a wastebasket fire.
That is a perfect analogy.
It stops the immediate pain, but it leaves a mess.
Yeah.
And the tragedy of it is that both the protectors, with their exhausting emotional labor, and the firefighters, with their desperate numbing, are just working to guard the deepest, most vulnerable parts of the system.
The exiles.
Right, the exiles.
The exiles are the hidden, younger, wounded places within the psyche. They are the parts that carry the burdens of past trauma, the feelings of unworthiness, abandonment, and shame.
And the text describes these exiles as the parts that fundamentally believe love must be earned through utility.
That's heartbreaking.
It really is. It's the part that feels unwanted, unless it is actively building or fixing something for someone else. The entire elaborate system, the fixing, the building, the numbing, is constructed solely to keep these exiles from ever being touched or seen.
Because the system believes the pain they carry would be fatal to experience.
Wow. And the way these concepts are woven into the song is genuinely breathtaking. The clinical language completely falls away. It becomes pure poetry.
The translation to lyrics is incredible.
There's a bridge, or a variation of the verse that goes, "There was a fixer in the hallway. There was a healer at the door. There was a child begging softly, "Please don't leave me anymore."
Chills.
It is a one-to-one translation of IFS theory into lyrics. The fixer and the healer are the protectors guarding the door, and the child begging softly is the exile.
It's an incredibly elegant distillation of a complex psychological theory. The lyrics place these internal parts into a physical space. The hallway, the door. It externalizes the internal landscape.
Which brings us back to the music video, because visualizing an internal family is an incredibly abstract challenge for a director.
It could easily go so wrong.
It really could. If you aren't careful, it could easily look cheesy or disjointed. But the video introduces these three men, Elias, Silas, and Victor. And the visual treatment of them is so sophisticated.
They don't look like roommates.
No. The director goes to great lengths to ensure we don't view them as three separate people with separate lives. They are interwoven reflections.
You see this very early in the shot list. The camera focuses on a tarnished, peeling mirror on the wall, and we see the ghostly, interwoven reflections of the three men. Their faces subtly shift and blend into one another. It's a visual cue that these are facets of a single diamond. The shot list also describes Silas and Victor standing like ethereal specters in gray shadows while Elias writes at the desk.
So they aren't fully solid.
Right. They aren't fully solid. They are psychological weight made visible.
I was wondering about that specific choice. Because if you have three actors in a room, the instinct is to have them interact like normal people. But the video explicitly confirms they are psychological fragments.
There's that one specific shot.
Yeah, there's an over-the-shoulder shot where Silas is looking at Elias. And Elias has his fingers literally buried inside Victor's semi-translucent torso.
It's such a bold visual.
And then Victor's figure just dissipates into mist.
That is the moment the director removes all ambiguity. The physical impossibility of a hand passing through a torso confirms that we are entirely within a single consciousness.
Wow.
Elias, representing the conscious mind or perhaps the emerging self, is actively interacting with his protectors. He is literally reaching into the substance of his own defenses, trying to understand what they are made of.
And when he touches it, it vanishes.
Exactly. When he touches the truth of that part, it dissipates. It doesn't need to hold its rigid defensive posture anymore.
And the visual of the exile is even more striking. Later in the video, we see a dark, narrow hallway lined with vintage mirrors. The cool blue moonlight is mixing with just a few sparse amber reflections, and huddled against the wall in the foreground is a small child, cowering away from the light. It's such a visceral representation of that lyric, the child begging softly.
The child in the hallway is the core wound. The protectors have built this entire house, this entire hallway of mirrors, to keep people away from that child.
To keep them safe.
Right. And the video juxtaposes that cowering child with an incredible visual right after. It shows a glowing human heart suspended midair in that same hallway, pulsing with warm amber and red light.
That's beautiful.
It really is. The video is literally mapping out the inner system. It is showing us the defenses, the wounded core, and the enduring pulse of the self, all coexisting in this internal architecture.
But realizing you have these protective parts is only half the battle. Identifying them is just step one, right?
Oh, definitely.
The terrifying part is actually looking at what these parts have been doing in the real world. The text transitions from simply naming the parts to forcing the author to confront their shadows.
And this is where the text dives deep into Carl Jung's concept of shadow work.
Right. And I feel like shadow work is a term thrown around a lot these days, but how does it apply here?
Well, Jungian psychology is a natural companion to IFS. The concept of the shadow refers to the aspects of our personality that the conscious ego denies, represses, or refuses to acknowledge.
Like our dark side.
Usually people think of the shadow as our dark, socially unacceptable impulses, rage, greed, selfishness, cruelty. But the author makes a profound and frankly very uncomfortable realization here.
Which is?
A shadow doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes the shadow wears the face of extreme patience, care, and compassion.
Okay, I have to stop you there and maybe push back on the premise of the text a bit.
Sure.
Because this wounded healer concept, saying that trying to help a toxic partner is actually a manifestation of your own shadow, that feels incredibly harsh.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It borders on victim blaming. I mean, if I am in a relationship with someone who is struggling, and I am sacrificing my own peace to pull them out of a dark place, how is that a shadow trait? Shouldn't we celebrate empathy? Why is the text framing this as a dark, controlling mechanism?
It's a very natural reaction to feel defensive about that because our culture deeply romanticizes the idea of saving someone through love.
We totally do.
We are taught that ultimate love is ultimate sacrifice. But the Jungian perspective and what the author realizes is that empathy crosses a line into shadow when it becomes an agenda.
An agenda.
Yes. The shadow aspect isn't the care itself, it's the need for the other person to change so that you can feel safe.
Wow.
The author writes this devastating line: "Love is not rescue. When you are endlessly fixing, managing, and overgiving, you are not actually loving the reality of the person in front of you. You are trying to control their environment and their behavior to alleviate your own anxiety."
That completely flips the script. It's like you think your patience is a virtue, but framing it as a covert control tactic is, well, it's a bitter pill to swallow.
It recontextualizes the whole dynamic.
It does. The author realizes that their empathy was actually a defense mechanism. They wanted the partner to heal so badly. Because if the partner healed, the chaos would stop and the author wouldn't have to fear their own hidden exiles.
Precisely. And this leads to one of the most mature moments of introspection in the entire text. The author mentions that during the conflict, the partner had actually called them a narcissist.
Ouch.
Now, normally when we are accused of something like that, especially by someone who's been harming us, the ego immediately violently deflects it. We build a wall. We say, "I'm the victim here. How dare you?"
Of course, that's a natural defense.
But the author does the exact opposite. They don't absorb the label as a shame-based identity, but they use it as a tool.
The text mentions they literally picked up a book titled Self-Aware Narcissism and used it as a mirror. They used their abuser's insult to examine their own ego. They looked at their own defensiveness, their need for validation, their need to be the good guy or the savior in the narrative.
It's incredibly brave.
They looked at how their relentless need to be right and their control, disguised as protection, was contributing to the toxicity.
It requires immense psychological fortitude to do that. To look at your own shadow while you are actively bleeding from someone else's actions, they recognize the immense burden of their own projection.
Projection is a big theme here.
It is. They were loving the potential of the partner. The text refers to it as the cabin version of the future, this idealized, stable, peaceful life they envisioned.
Oh, like someday we'll have a cabin and everything will be fine.
Right. But by projecting that fantasy onto the partner, they were completely ignoring the unsafe, chaotic reality of who the partner actually was in the present moment. They were demanding that the partner step into a future they were neither ready for nor capable of achieving.
The lyrics capture the tragedy of this projection perfectly. The song goes, "I wanted you to rise up. I wanted you to see, but maybe all my helping asked you to become like me."
Such a powerful admission.
It's a total admission of ego. And later in the song, it gets even more explicit. "I projected all my healing, my future and my fire, my meaning and redemption, my impossible desire." The author is taking full ownership of the fact that their help was actually a crushing form of pressure.
And this brings us to how the video visualizes this Jungian concept. Throughout the shot list, there is a recurring presence described simply as the shadow figure.
Right, the smoky silhouette.
Yeah, it's a smoky, charcoal gray silhouette that seems to bleed out of the shadows in the room. It's never fully formed. Early on, it reaches for the warm vintage lamp on the desk. Later, it curls defensively in the mirrored hallway.
I noticed that. It doesn't act like a horror movie monster. It isn't attacking anyone. It feels pathetic almost.
Which is exactly how Jung conceptualized the shadow. It is not a demon to be slain. It is a wounded, neglected part of the psyche that has been cast into the dark.
It just wants the light.
Exactly. It reaches for the warm amber lamp because it is starved for the light of conscious awareness. It curls defensively in the hallway because it is terrified of being seen, not because it is malicious.
Wow.
The shadow figure is the visual embodiment of the author's need to control, their hidden ego, their resentment, all the things the fixer-protector tried to pretend didn't exist.
And the mirrors. We have to talk about the relentless use of mirrors in this video.
Oh, they are everywhere.
The director uses them constantly to force this confrontation with the shadow. There's a scene where the three men are facing a crooked silver mirror on a wall with peeling wallpaper. And later, Elias looks directly into a mirror, but he doesn't see his own face.
No, he doesn't.
He sees Silas staring back with this silent, deeply anguished expression.
Mirrors are the classic literary and visual symbol for self-reflection and the confrontation with the shadow self. But the specific details matter here. The mirror is crooked.
Which means
This implies that the self-image the author previously held, the image of the selfless, perfect savior, was distorted. It wasn't straight. And when Elias looks in and sees Silas's anguish, it represents the conscious ego finally witnessing the extreme exhaustion and pain of the protector parts.
like seeing how tired the fixer is.
Exactly. The ego realizes, my defenses are agonizing to maintain.
The analogy that came to my mind while reading this section of the text is, well, it's like trying to put makeup on a reflection.
Oh, that's good.
The author was trying so desperately to heal the partner, pouring all of this time, money, and emotional energy outward, trying to fix the image in the glass. But the video shows them staring into the crooked mirror, realizing they were actually just trying to heal themselves the whole time.
Treating the partner as a project.
Exactly. They were treating the partner as a proxy for their own wounds.
That is an incredibly astute analogy. And the text contains a line that serves as the ultimate boundary for this realization. Giving someone space to heal does not mean letting them destroy the room you are standing in.
Yes. And the video visualizes the consequence of ignoring that boundary. There's a low-angle, close-up shot of ruined wooden wreckage on the floor, with glowing embers and white smoke rising from the debris.
The aftermath.
It's the aftermath of the fire. It's the physical representation of what happens when you let the helping shadow run rampant. You end up destroying your own environment in the name of saving someone else.
So all of this deep introspection, the mapping of the parts, the confrontation with the shadow, staring into these crooked mirrors, it all leads to a singular point of climax.
The turning point.
Yes. We move to the exact moment where all of this outward energy, all the blame and the projection is entirely inverted into radical self-accountability. This brings us to the core metaphor of the entire deep dive, the concept that gives the song its title.
The epiphany that changes the entire trajectory of the author's life. Both the episode guide and the letter center heavily on this metaphor.
The three fingers.
Right. The realization is this. When you point the finger outward at your partner, blaming them for the chaos, blaming them for the ruined relationship, you are secretly leaving three fingers pointing back at yourself.
Pointing back at your own hidden exiles.
Pointing at your own unhealed wounds, your own complicity in the dynamic.
Three fingers pointing back. It is a physical, visceral metaphor for self-accountability. It takes the stance of accusation, the pointed index finger, and forces the accuser to examine the rest of the hand.
And this realization sparks a vital philosophical and psychological debate in the text regarding the difference between guilt and shame.
Which is a crucial distinction.
I found this distinction to be one of the most powerful parts of the sources you provided. Because usually we use those words interchangeably. I feel guilty, I feel ashamed. It feels like the same thing.
But it's not.
The text draws a hard line between them.
And clinically, that line is essential for healing. The author writes that guilt is an action-oriented emotion that can guide you back to integrity.
Okay, so guilt is helpful.
It can be. Guilt says, I made a mistake. I projected my trauma. I tried to control someone. I own what was mine. I will learn from it, and I will repair my behavior. Guilt is rooted in a stable sense of self, but shame is an identity-oriented emotion. Shame tries to bury you. Shame says, I am inherently toxic. I am fundamentally broken. I am exactly what my abuser called me. Shame demands that you hide.
The author chooses to accept the guilt for their projections, their rage, and their controlling shadows, but they violently refuse to absorb the shame that the toxic relationship tried to impose on them.
It's a refusal to be crushed.
And this internal shift culminates in a highly specific physical act described in the letter. The author had previously filled out paperwork to modify the protective order.
Right, they were considering pulling back.
They were going to keep the door slightly open, still clinging to that potential, still hoping the partner would suddenly heal and become the person they wanted them to be.
Because the protectors were still trying to manage the situation, the fixer wanted to leave a contingency plan in place.
Right, but then the author witnesses a reflection of their own toxic dynamic in the real world. They see another couple arguing, and they see the reality of what their own relationship looked like from the outside.
A wake-up call.
And the truth finally lands. They don't file the modification paper. They take the legal document and run it through a paper shredder.
Wow.
They physically destroy the mechanism of their own false hope. They choose their current safety and the stark reality of the present over the fantasy of the partner's potential.
It is the absolute death of projection. It is the moment the author accepts that they cannot love someone into health, and that waiting for potential is a form of self-abandonment.
And the lyrics spell out this turning point plainly in the chorus. It goes, "This letter was about you, till the silence pulled me back. and I rolled my hand over, saw 3 fingers pointing back.
The narrative structure of that lyric is so satisfying. The first line is the outward blame, the middle lines are the quiet room, and the final line is the epiphany.
So how does the video director handle this massive psychological climax? It happens in scene 7. We get an extreme close-up of Elias's hand, and it is bathed in a piercing, bright golden beam of light. He has his hand extended, index finger out. And then very slowly, he rotates his wrist, turning the hand inward so that the 3 folded fingers are pointing directly at his own heart.
It is the literal manifestation of the title executed with total visual clarity. And what elevates this sequence is the cinematic context surrounding it. Right after that shot, we see a projection of a frameless mechanical clock face on a dark wall.
But there are no hands in the clock.
The clock is entirely stripped of its hands.
I spent a lot of time thinking about that handless clock. At first, I thought it just meant feeling stuck, like time is dragging on when you were depressed. But considering the context of the trauma and the nervous system exhaustion we talked about earlier, I wonder if this is actually about relief.
Relief from what?
Like the anxiety of the ticking clock, the constant waiting for the next shoe to drop is finally gone.
You are touching on something profound there. It is about relief, but it's also about the timelessness of a true psychological breakthrough.
What do you mean?
When you are living in a trauma dynamic, you are obsessed with time drilling on the past, dreading the future, counting the days of sobriety, timing the arguments.
I think on a schedule of fear.
Exactly. But when you finally stop blaming the outside world, when you turn your hand inward and face your deepest self, time essentially stops. The frantic urgency of the protectors and the firefighters is halted. You enter a moment of pure, suspended truth. The ego's timeline collapses.
That makes so much sense. It's a moment of pure presence. And then we hit this visual sequence that completely changes the environment of the video.
The flooded hallway.
Yes. The narrow mirrored hallway that we saw earlier, the one where the child was cowering, is now completely flooded with a shallow pool of rainwater. The dark floor reflects the cool blue moonlight and the warm amber lamplight.
Beautiful imagery.
Elias, Silas, and Victor are all standing in the water looking down, and their intertwined silhouettes are reflected clearly in the pool beneath them.
The shifting symbolism of the water here is brilliant.
Let's talk about that transition. Because really in the video, water is purely an external threat. It's rain beating against the glass, representing the chaotic partner, the trauma of the storm outside.
But here, the water has breached the house.
It has flooded the internal hallway. It has swamped the internal system. But instead of drowning them, the water is shallow and still. It acts as a giant mirror for reflection.
The director is visualizing the concept of assimilation. The external storm, the trauma has been internalized, but it has not caused a collapse.
It brought clarity instead.
Instead, it has provided a surface for absolute clarity. By allowing the pain to flood the system rather than having the protectors fight it at the door, the author has created a mirror that shows the entire internal family. They can finally see all of themselves.
And what's floating on the surface of that water? The shot list describes a close-up of the crumpled manuscript pages, the early drafts of the blame letter floating gently on the dark water, but they are glowing warmly.
The glowing pages are so significant.
The painful words of the letter, the anger, the analysis, it is all being held and reflected by the subconscious. It's not being thrown away, it's being illuminated by understanding.
And we must mention the holographic star map in this sequence.
Oh, yes.
Right before Elias turns his hand inward, there is a macro view of a holographic star map projected above the wooden table. Brilliant golden vines are winding through the astral patterns.
I have to admit, it felt a bit sci-fi at first, but in the context of IFS, it clicks.
Because the author isn't just fixing a minor relationship flaw or tweaking a bad habit. By doing this intense IFS and shadow work, they are mapping an entire inner universe.
It's massive internal exploration.
They are discovering the vastness of their own psyche, the constellations of their internal parts, the gravity of their exiles. It frames the act of self-discovery not as a clinical chore, but as a cosmic, almost sacred exploration.
Which perfectly sets up the final movement of this journey. We've mapped the universe. We've turned the fingers back. We've flooded the hallway and seen the reflections. Now the journey has to find its resolution.
The integration phase.
Right. We transition from the dark, flooded, mirrored hallways of the past into the bright, integrated reality of the present. This is the final section, the Golden Dawn.
The text establishes the ultimate destination of this psychological roadmap. After all the chaos, all the projecting, all the desperate attempts to build walls and boundaries to keep the partner in line, the author arrives at a breathtakingly simple conclusion.
And what is that?
There is only one non-negotiable boundary moving forward: truth. Not 1,000 rules, not elaborate contingency plans managed by the fixer, just truth.
The letter ends with a very specific quote from the book of John. "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."
A classic verse.
And to be clear, in the context of the letter, this isn't framed as a religious sermon. It's framed as an operational baseline. The truth of who the partner is, the truth of what the author's shadow did, the truth of the present moment.
Radical acceptance of reality.
And you hear that exact sentiment echoed in the final lyrics of the song. Truth is the line now, truth is the door. Truth is the only thing I am building on anymore. And then the final declaration. Now I stand inside the truth. Nothing hidden, nothing owed.
Nothing hidden, nothing owed. That is the sound of the nervous system finally powering down.
True peace.
There are no more lies to manage, no more potential to wait for, no more emotional debts to collect. And this is where the music video masterfully pays off the lighting symbolism that was established in the very first frame.
The amber and the blue.
Throughout the entire video, we have watched this claustrophobic battle between the warm amber of the self and the cool blue moonlight of the trauma. But as the song reaches its climax, the cool blue is entirely overtaken by a molten golden light of breaking dawn.
It is a total visual paradigm shift. The storm is over. And my favorite visual in the entire shot list happens here. Those ornate, crooked wall mirrors that the author has been staring into for the whole video.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
They crack. But they don't shatter because someone threw a chair at them. The shot list explicitly states that a supernatural golden amber glow seeps through the fissures. The mirrors are cracking from the pressure of the light bursting from within.
It's a gorgeous, triumphant metaphor. The illusions, the projections, the fragmented reflections of the self that the ego relied on, they are shattered by the internal truth radiating outward.
It's too bright to be contained.
The ego defenses literally cannot contain the core self anymore. The truth is too bright, too expansive to be held in a crooked mirror.
But what happens to the parts? What happens to Elias's companions, Silas and Victor? Because in a lot of traditional narratives, the hero would vanquish his demons. He would kill the parts of himself that were holding him back.
But the video doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't.
And it shouldn't, because in internal family systems therapy, the goal is never to kill or evict your parts. You cannot amputate a piece of your own psyche.
That would just be more trauma.
Exactly. The goal is integration. The goal is to relieve the protectors of their extreme jobs so they can return to their natural, healthy states. The video shows this integration beautifully.
How so?
Earlier in the process, we see Silas and Victor dissolving into a shimmering blue mist. And then in the final scenes, they are standing on either side of the mirrored hallway, and the bright golden morning sun washes over them.
They are destroyed.
They don't die. They dissolve slowly into the light. They're absorbed back into the core self.
And those floating manuscript pages from the flooded hallway, the heavy, painful words of the blame letter. The shot list describes pure white doves ascending among the illuminated floating pages.
Transformation.
The pain isn't erased, but it is transformed. The heavy words become symbols of peace and release. The exiles and the protectors aren't kicked out of the house. They are finally allowed to step out of the dark hallway and watch the sunrise together.
That is true psychological integration. The internal family is no longer at war.
Which leads to the final cinematic walk. Elias steps through a heavy door and walks out onto an empty, rain-slick city street. But it's no longer the terrifying, stormy night from the beginning.
It's a new day.
It's sunrise. The puddles on the ground, which used to be dark floodwater, are now reflecting a vibrant golden halo of the morning sun. He is walking in the real world again. But the environment isn't threatening anymore. He's carrying the light with him.
And the director leaves us with one final cosmic visual. As Elias walks down the street, his figure slowly fades into an image of the Milky Way galaxy.
Bringing back the star map idea.
Exactly. The earthly perspective and the cosmic perspective blend into one. It perfectly visualizes the text's assertion that this healing journey has moved the author to a higher vibration. It is a profound spiritual alignment that completely transcends the earthly chaos of the toxic relationship they started in. By going inward, by mapping their own stars, they have become a universe unto themselves.
So let's pull all of these threads together. We have gone on an extraordinary journey through your sources today. We started with a clinical, rigid, terrifying language. of a legal document, a protective order against an unsafe partner.
We saw the absolute lowest point.
We watched a person consumed by outward blame get pulled, against their will, into the terrifying silence of their own mind. We navigated the abstract, shadowed corridors of internal family systems therapy and Jungian psychology.
We watched the protectors exhaust themselves trying to control the room, the firefighters seeking desperate numb relief, and the exiles carrying the deepest wounds.
And confronting the shadow.
We watched the author confront the shadow of their own kindness, realizing that their empathy had become a mechanism of control and that projecting hope over reality is a dangerous illusion.
And it all culminated in a masterpiece of a music video where trauma dissolves into a golden dawn. The imagery of Elias, Silas, and Victor, the rain beating against the glass, the flooded hallways turning into mirrors, the cracking glass, it all perfectly amplified the raw truth of the letter and the poetry of the lyrics.
It's a beautiful synthesis.
It proves that the most terrifying storm is often the one inside our own minds, but so is the sunrise.
It is a profound testament to the power of radical self-accountability. Taking the immense energy we use to blame others and turning it inward to map our own internal system is the hardest work a person can do. But as the text shows, it is the only path to true freedom.
Which brings us right back to the beginning. We talked about how an X-ray gives us a clean, binary picture of a broken bone. But trauma is muddy waters. Well, maybe the X-ray isn't broken. Maybe this deep dive shows us that when we look inward, we are just looking at a different kind of skeleton, an internal architecture of parts, shadows, and light that we just have to learn how to read.
That's a great perspective to end on.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a thought to mull over. Think about those crooked, cracked silver mirrors from the video. If you were to sit in a quiet room today and strip away all the noise, all the distractions, and all the blame you place on the people around you, when you roll your own hand over, what are the three fingers pointing back at you trying to say? Who are the protectors, the firefighters, and the exiles waiting in your own shadowy hallway, just hoping for a little bit of that golden light? Thanks for bringing us this incredible stack of sources. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
What was beautiful and still not go back. I was trying to survive you, trying to survive me, trying to find the truth that finally set me free. I owned what was mine, but I won't carry what was yours. My mirror showed my shadow.